Hello, this is the voice of Stuart Pearce, and welcome to Deep Dialogues, a series of vital conversations that I have with global soul stewards from all over the world who provide us with an understanding of how we can create a new hierarchy of values that is absolutely significant at this unique time of becoming. I hope you enjoy, and thanks for listening. Hello!
Hi, Stuart. Hi.
Oh my goodness, everybody, have I got something special for you, this wonderful woman that's sitting before us. And let me introduce you to Renae Plant, and I'm going to go through her official bio. But for those of you who are tuning in from all over the world, Daniela, I see your name. I know a number of people will be rolling in, and so we'll, by the time we get into 5 minutes of our conversation, there are going to be lots of people pouring in from all over the world, because I know I've received so many people wrote emails saying, "Oh my God, I'm so excited!" That because everybody's plugged into the wonder, the awe, the legacy, and the absolute healing power of Diana, Princess of Wales. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Everybody, I'm going to officially introduce you to the CEO and curator of the Princess Diana Museum, this wonderful lady, Renae Plant, who's, hello, Melanie, hello, Tiff, here they come rolling in.
Hi, everybody.
Wonderful to see you guys. And as you can hear, well, you haven't heard fully yet, but you will in a moment. The wonderful Renae is originally from Australia, but we see her in her amazing she shack in Los Angeles, in Los Feliz.
I am in Los Feliz at the moment, and I just let you know it's raining here, which is very unusual for this time of year, and we're super excited. Yeah.
Super, I love it. Super excited.
Super excited to have rain.
This is who Renae is. Hello, Stacey. Hello, Melanie. Hello, Tiff. Hello, Dorina. You're all rolling in. Wonderful. So Renae is the director and curator of the virtual award-winning Princess Diana Museum, which she launched in December 2019. This is the first virtual museum of its kind, which holds the largest collection of Diana's most iconic personal artifacts, items which span the entire lifetime of Diana, Princess of Wales, with keen reference to her immense legacy via the Princess and Platypus Foundation, which of course, Renae is going to introduce us to, which is a non-profit organization that raises money for children's charities in honor of Diana. Post Diana's death, her personal belongings were sold at private auctions and scattered around the world. And it is Renae's mission and passion to gather and preserve as many of her personal belongings as possible, Diana's personal belongings, of course. Renae lives in Los Angeles and is also co-director of the Camelot Kids Child Development Center, which she shares with her husband, Livinio, with whom she has 3 amazing children, Ilan, Mateo, and Deklan. In 2015, Renae was nominated a 28th Congressional District Woman of the Year by the US Congress for her unique and extraordinary charitable work within the field of child education. Renae, welcome.
Thank you so much, Stuart. That was a lovely introduction. I feel like I've lived a long time to earn all that credit.
It's good, isn't it? It's good.
Makes me feel old.
And as we know with darling Diana, she was so rich in superlatives. Wow, that's amazing. How delightful. You look fantastic.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Mine is gorgeous. I say gorgeous all the time. I have a gorgeous day. I sign all my emails, have a gorgeous day. It sets the tone for everything. Or a night if you're going into the evening.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah. And more people are rolling in. So just very quickly, I think I've said hello, Stacey, Lisa, Rossi, Marjorie. It's wonderful to see you all. And here we have before us the wonderful Renae Plant. So Renae,
yeah,
when you received your first impression of Diana, where did it take place and what quality of impact did it have on you?
Yeah, so this is a really amazing story. I mean, I grew up in Australia, and of course we were influenced by the royals. We're part of the Commonwealth, so we were kind of well versed in the royal family. And it was a field trip that I got taken on as a 12-year-old. So as a little tiny 12-year-old, I was in grade 7, and we were told that our school was going to go out and meet royalty. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get this opportunity to meet a princess. And I'd already watched the wedding in 1981, so I had this deep connection with her before I'd even met her. I was, you know, obviously one of those kids that just loved like her as a princess. But to be able to have her come to Australia in my little tiny small town of Yamundi, she actually ended up going to the Yandina ginger factory, which was
where exactly was this, sweetheart?
So it's in Queensland, up the northern part of Australia. And so it's a little tiny settlement. It's called the Sunshine Coast. And this was back in 1983. It's a place where people retire now in Australia. It's kind of well known and became more famous as time went on. But back then it was like, it's hard to explain, a hippie kind of settlement if you want to look at it like that. Very, very small town, farming. So they went there to learn how ginger grew in a factory. And so we were those kids that lined up along the path, and we were all waving flags. And I had a little pocket camera. I got given it by Santa Claus that Christmas. And I was just taking photos of her, and her and Charles walked in. And I was one of those kids that snuck under a barricade and went around the back when I should have been going to roll call and eating snack with my class. I was not going to do that. I was like following basically behind, taking more photos. So as she comes out from lunch, I'm on the opposite side to where I should be. And there's paparazzi, 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 and then little old me. And I'm just looking up, and she came out on my side, thankfully, you know, it was on my side. And she stopped because it was all photographers. And then I just was looking up, and I'll just never forget this, Stuart. She stopped, shook my hand for what felt like eternity. And I was speechless. For the first time in my life, I could not say a word. And it's not like she just brushed on by and kept going. There was this interaction that I still hold with me today. Like I can see it like it was just yesterday. And with that, she kept moving, and I was so like, oh my God, I didn't say anything. So I go under the barricade again. I'm one of those kids, and now I'm, you know, kind of walking behind the royal procession. There's a photo of me, actually this one here. They've captured me walking behind them. And a friend of mine yells, Renae, she's dropped something in the dirt. Well, I bend over and I pick up this tiny little clay platypus. I actually got it out of my safe for you today, in the dirt. And it was that I went, oh my gosh. So I ran over to the policeman thinking that he's going to let me run into the car and hand the little thing back. And he closed my hand like that. And he said, she must have dropped it to give it to you. Well, that was all that it took. With that, it changed my entire life. So this little tiny clay platypus is basically 35 years later. Never in a million years would I have thought I would have created a foundation, but it was this little guy here that caused that moment to happen. So it changed my life, and it's because of this little guy that it happened. I tell my kids that story, and they're like, that's it. It's so tiny.
Where do you feel she gained that? Where did she receive that?
Someone had given it to her. Like a platypus is like an animal, a marsupial from Australia. It's actually clay. It's handmade, and it actually really does fit. It feels like someone just made it, and it fits like the finger mold. It's really kind of cool when you touch it. And so someone had given it to her, and she's carrying flowers and all this stuff, and so she's accidentally dropped it. And years later, after I did the museum, I actually found a photo where you see the platypus actually at her feet when she's wearing white shoes. Wow. And then I'm behind her. So doing the research in the museum, I actually stumbled upon a photo, and you can see the little platypus at her feet. And yeah, I was just fortunate enough to walk by and pick it up. And so that was I was 12 then. And then I met her a second time when I was 18.
Can you just hold it up to the camera so that thank you. So that we get this appreciation of what it is. Thank you so much.
Can you see it? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. So that was the first time, and you were just going on to, and then the second time.
So the second time I was 18, you know, and 6 years had passed, and they actually came back to Australia in 1988. And it was around January, and I was in Sydney at that time. My mum and dad had separated, so I'd actually moved to Sydney. And it was a really hot day. We were on our way to Bondi Beach, the very famous beach in Sydney. And we caught the bus in, and we got out on, you know, George Street, and there's all this crowd. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And they're like, Prince Charles and Lady Diana at St. Andrew's Cathedral. And I'm like, oh, I had 3 girlfriends with me at the time. And I said, we're not going to Bondi Beach right now. We're going to stay. So we got milk crates, you know, when the milk would be delivered in crates. We went across the milk bar because I was late. You know, a lot of people had already lined up to wait to see her. And so I'm standing on a milk crate, had a camera again. And I'm like, Kim, take a photo of me shaking Lady Di's hand. Well, I'm cut out of all the photos. You don't even see me in them, but I'm shaking Lady Di's hand. And I'm screaming. Like, I had a boob tube on, you know, like the 80s, the white top and the white shorts, and it was hot. And she was hot too. She was sweating a lot that day. But I'm screaming, Lady Di, Lady. And she literally, again, Stuart, without a word of a lie, I'll kind of pull this off thing and see if you can actually see. The look that she gives you when, I don't know if you're going to see it pretty. That's her basically shaking my hand. There's my hand. Oh, there you go. I've got to go there. There's my hand. And she looks at you. I don't know if you see it. It's going to be blurry.
Yeah, that's it. But just a little bit closer if you can.
Closer? Yeah. I hope you can see it.
The lighting is not very good, but you can see the rough form of her holding her hand up. Yeah.
But look, I wish you could see the look in her eyes that she literally looks at you. And I've done a lot of interviews with people over the years now. They all say the same thing, that she had this gift to make you feel like you knew her, so connected, even though if it was a brief instant, a shake, a look, she just had that gift. And I was fortunate enough to experience it twice. So, and that was growing up in Australia.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and often referred to as this extraordinary immediacy that she had. It was part of the hallmark of her authenticity, that she would just have those extraordinary blue eyes.
Yeah,
would be like a sort of echolocation for those people that she could connect with.
Yeah,
most people. And what you received was this extraordinary impulse of love that came through the transmission from her. And it was the most extraordinary thing. She was literally a conduit from the divine for this immense grace that she imparted, which she was completely unaware of. She just was.
That's the gift, yeah.
And then I was able to define it for her during the last 2 years, and we worked on igniting it, you know, very specifically. Amazing, amazing, amazing. And so over the years, of course, this impacted you so hugely that you know, what do you feel her global appeal was based on? Because she became this vast, iconic reference.
I think I know when it happened. It was around the time when she took her gloves off to touch, you know, people that were HIV positive. And you've got to go back to that time. It's almost like having COVID-19 right now, where everybody's afraid to touch each other, hug each other. We're all wearing masks. And so back in the day, no one knew the extent of that disease, and she wasn't afraid. She basically took her gloves off and started hugging people and showed this compassion that a lot of people were afraid to do. And the royal family was not that significant back then, and the royal gloves were always on, and it was a very institutional, you know, systematic thing to do. She took her gloves off and she started to hug people and show affection. And I think that was the real transformation of what her global presence started to be like, because people started to feel the compassion and the kindness and the love and the wanting to be loved, the needing to be touched, just the touch of a cheek, like, and she gave them in gestures so that it was replicated around the world. That to me was the key pivotal point that made me feel that. And then I think gave celebrities platforms after that. There were no celebrities doing that before her. And so she was that first, I think, iconic figure that allowed people to go, hey, if I'm famous, I'm now able to go and use this to benefit good in the world. And I think that's when the celebrity, you know, and all the foundations started to take off. But it was definitely because of her.
Absolutely. So in fact, she was seeding what I call the revolution of the empaths. Iconic point of view, and it was just purely and simply that she was doing what she always did, which was just out of pure love and out of pure grace and out of pure compassion. But it detonated this vast wave of consciousness, and as you were saying, as a result of that, it became cool for celebs to do similar things.
That's right.
And then more importantly, perhaps, the whole nature of the way that the resonance carried through all of the charitable institutions that she was benefactress for. So
That's
this
right.
seeded within you this extraordinary love for Diana. But
Yeah.
then when did you dream the museum into reality? I mean, I don't mean literally, but when did you first,
Yeah.
oh, I've got to do this. I've got to do this. When did you first?
It kind of organically again. There was an auction that came up here in Los Angeles at Julian's auction, and I had a friend, Kevin, who said, "Let's go and have a look at the dresses." And my husband and I at the time were about to actually make an investment in a restaurant and be like a 0% owner of an investment. And so when I saw this opportunity to invest into something historical belonging to Princess Diana, which had a huge impact on my heart, we decided not to invest into a restaurant, but then to, invest in a dress. And so that dress it was a Carolyn Charles dress. Right. I fell on the floor when I won it. There's actually video of me, like I got the paddle and then I fell on the ground because I actually could not believe that I would be a custodian of something so iconic and precious. And it's a dress where she's actually carrying Prince William on her hip. And I thought I was more drawn to that because it's a piece that actually the future King of England is on. And all the Christie dresses at that point had been sold and resold, and I felt more gravitated to that piece because there were 3 other Christie dresses up for auction that night. All of them went for less than our dress, by the way, and ours was the last one to go. I just knew, and there was something about it. And so I felt that would be more relevant moving on because, the children, the king, the future king, was attached to the dress as well. And so that's how it started. And then we acquired.
So just to clarify, so there you are in Los Angeles, because we were just in Sydney,
right?
Then many years later, so
many years later,
15, 20 years later, life has carried you.
2014. So
2014 on this vast world. There you are in Los Angeles, and you're married, and the children are coming forth.
Totally, yeah.
Then a friend of yours and you discovered that there was an auction of some of Diana's artifacts.
Yeah.
In downtown Los Angeles. So you went to the auction rooms.
That's
and
right.
There was this extraordinary Carolyn Charles dress.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we can't now go to a photograph of it.
That's okay.
What we will do in a moment is to have, we have about 8 representations from your museum.
Okay.
And so we will honor that. And what Ryan's done is to place the garment against the photograph, so he'll show them. He'll show the moment, and maybe when we finished our sort of intro, maybe what can happen is that you can just curate us through the garbs.
Oh, absolutely,
there are about 8, so that people can recognize it. But just to stabilize, so here was this dress, which gave you this immense, ignited this extraordinary feeling of, oh my God, there's much potential in the possibility of having a collection of Diana's artifacts. Is that what happened?
Yeah, it happened like that. We loaned that dress back down to the Queen Mary, which at the time had a Princess Diana exhibit on display. It had been the longest, actually most popular exhibit.
Okay, so you just need to explain what that is, darling, because a lot of people won't know.
Queen Mary is a big boat that is stuck at, it's launched at Long Beach, and it's been there permanently, and they turned it into a hotel. And
just for everybody, the Queen Mary was one of the royal vessels that was named after Queen Mary, who was the wife of George V. So this is the present Queen's grandfather. Okay? Yeah. And it was in royal service for I think for about 40 years, and they used the royal yacht. And then came the royal yacht Britannia, which was created for George VI and Queen Elizabeth, whom we knew as Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, meaning the present Queen, Elizabeth II's mother and father. So the Queen Mary was then sold to the highest bidder and was bought by a Los Angeles tycoon who then parked it in a harbor, and it became, I think, initially a casino, and then it became a hotel. So there you were in the Queen Mary.
Yeah, and that is how we lent it to the Queen Mary. It was on display down there for many years, at least 2 years after that. And then what happened was the Versace dress. Well, the Versace dress is spectacular. It is like, you look at it and it is embezzled with jewels and gorgeous. It's so heavy when you hold it. It's like long story, same auction house. I wasn't expecting it to come up that quickly, but because the dress that we bought from Carol and Charles went for so much money, this person in Germany, this dress has been stored in a cupboard in Germany for 20 years by the time we got it. And so it had never been to an auction before. And again, I gravitate to things that have never.
How did that person acquire the dress?
It was part of a collection. Her mother worked in the fashion industry and ended up with all of Versace collections. So she's got the pin dress, all these famous gowns that were worn by celebrities back in the day. She would acquire and kept and it was passed on to her daughter, and then her daughter kept them. And because
But was the original dress, the Versace, we're talking, we actually had, I think you're talking about the single strap shoulder.
Yeah. Patrick de Mercier took the photo in private, and she's got a hair slicked back.
Which is ivory, and it has this extraordinary crustacean of jewels on the front.
Amazing, yeah.
We do actually have it in the curation that you've provided for us, so we'll look at it clearly at the moment.
Yeah.
But I'm fascinated in the story. But where was it acquired? Was it one of the dresses that were auctioned in the Christie auction?
No. In fact, every single piece, and this is what I love about the museum, every single piece that we actually have in display has not been sold at Christie's auction. And I kind of gravitate to these other pieces that are finding their way out of cupboards, and some have been in a box. There's a little piece of like where the rats have chewed on a Chelsea blazer. But, you know, the people just stored it in a box. So these pieces are coming out, and we've got every piece that hasn't been at Christie's. So we've got over 50 clothing pieces right now, I would say, in the museum, ranging from baby dresses that she's worn to fashion items, sweaters, you name it. Ski pants when she was in Switzerland. Lots of stuff.
So for those of you who are tuning in, and hello Jenny, hello Helen, hello Hanika, hello Melanie. I think I've already said that, forgive me. Hello and Julie, lovely that you're here. Rossi, Lisa, Stacy, Dorina, I've already said hello to. What Renee's talking about is an extraordinary auction that was created by the auctioneers Christie. You know, in the world there are these two big establishment auctioneers. One is called Sotheby's, the other is called Christie's. And towards when Diana was going through her huge transition, this is 95, 96. But William, Prince William
came up with the idea,
had the idea, well, Mum, why don't you sell these extraordinary dresses? Because she had hundreds and hundreds of gowns. Why don't you? And they're all iconic, of course, because they're made by these extraordinary designers. Why don't you give them to Christie's to auction? And then all of the money that's raised will go to charities that you will name, which are mostly cancer charities, weren't they? So this is what happened. That's what Renee's referring to. This is what happened. And I don't have the exact date, but it was in
June 97, which was the auction. And I actually was in New York at the time living, and I actually went to see the preview of the dresses back then. And I couldn't afford any of them back then, Stuart. So I was like, and they all went for so little back then now compared to what they do now. But yeah, I saw them back then. And it was,
yeah. So this was as you know, as you can hear Renee saying, this was in New York in June 97.
Yeah.
So effectively, we're talking about, it was on June the 25th, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
So we're really talking about just 2 months before her departure.
Totally. Yeah, which is why when that happened, the dresses actually really went up in value. Some of these dresses went for 20,000, 35. I think the John Travolta dress was the most expensive back then, but they all shot up in value overnight when she passed, you know, sadly. But it was an investment for people, and they still are. They're iconic. It raised over $4 million back then for charity, which was it was the biggest amount of money raised around the world for any auction. And I actually don't think that's happened again since. Yeah. Which speaks volumes. Yeah.
Did you say 4 million?
Yeah, over 4 million. I think it was 4.1 or 4.2. Yeah.
Amazing. And of course, now we're talking, if the same thing happened today, it would be in stratospheric proportions.
Totally, yeah.
As a result of the extraordinary interest that you brought about, that my book is beginning to kindle, all the varying stimuli that is there about Diana for very specific reasons, which we'll come to in our conclusion about, well, why is this significant to our lives?
Right.
But back to where we were. So maybe this is a really good point, because you're mentioning a lot of extraordinary the artifacts that you have. Maybe this is a point to go into looking at the items that you very kindly have shared just for this deep dialogue.
Sure.
So Ryan, could you, I mean, you know, it doesn't matter what order they are in. Ryan's collated them very beautifully, because you can automatically, here we are.
Oh, so, wow. Yeah. This is a new piece that we're acquiring, or just acquired. It actually just came. A lot of these people are old now, like I said, so hasn't been at auction. And it's been passed to a foundation that I work with, and then they help me acquire pieces. So this was a private portrait with Gemma Levine, shot, I think, 1991. And I'm actually about to interview Gemma too. She's 86 right now. And so what is really unique about the museum is that there's a piece, but we also try to interview the person along with the item to give it a personal touch and more value to the history of the pieces.
And of course, what we'll do, ladies and gentlemen, what we'll do is to make sure towards the end of our dialogue, which is in about 40 minutes, what we'll do is to make sure that you have all of the details about how you can immediately, post-dialogue, go to Renae's museum, the Princess Diana Museum. So this piece was created by Corinne. No, what was her name?
I'm actually not sure of the designer, because I actually don't have it in my possession right now. It's still with the charity that I work with. Okay. But Gemma Levine is the photographer who took the photo. And so when you get a piece like this that hasn't been sold before out of an auction, and you get a person that's still alive to do an interview, this to me is a golden experience.
Yeah.
Very special.
I noticed that Diana's wearing it in a slightly déshabillé form. You know, she hasn't done all the buttons up.
No,
Was it for, do you know which occasion it was for?
It was a private portrait setting. So these were just done in private, and that actually just released for her. That, like, she'd give them out for cards and things like that when she would do thank you cards, and they would have Kensington Palace on the back of it. Right.
Okay. I see. Because what's interesting, as we know, is that during the early part of her royal career, I mean, during the time that you would have met her, 83, 84, 85, for those of you who need a time magnet, Diana first came to our attention in 81, and in 81 she was married to Princess Charles. Prince
Charles, yeah.
And during that early time, she was immensely respectful of the role that she had been given and the august nature of it. And because she was the patron of a number of major charities and military regiments, she often had clothes made for her in a pseudo-military style. And, you know, as we can see, this jacket is slightly military. However, as we can see from the photograph, do you know when this photograph was actually taken?
It was in 1991. I'd have to look up my database right now, but it was 1991. I want to say the middle of the year.
Okay, because we can see that, you know, Diana's face is beginning to mature, and her hairstyle has changed quite considerably. You know, when Sam got hold of her, he shortened the bouffant that had been encouraged. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and so Richard Dalton stopped working with her in September 1991, and after that, Sam McKnight started working with her. Yeah.
And it was actually Mara, you know, Mara Burney, who introduced me to Diana. It was Mara who introduced Sam to Diana as well. So Mara, the dear departed one, she was an extraordinary lady. However, Ryan, may we go on, please, to the next image?
This one is amazing. So when you find little gems like this is a Gina Frattini gown. It's velvet and polka dots like embedded in the velvet. It's very, very rare. It's an old what year was this? 1981. So it kind of goes along with the Carolyn style dress that we have. Very puffy sleeves, which were the 80s, the dropped waist, things like that. So to find a piece like this, very rare again. Yeah.
Extraordinary. And as
Yeah.
you said, so we are sort of not maze-like, but we've just gone back in time. So we had
Very much, yes.
the last tunic from the early
Yeah.
90s. Now we're going back 10 years prior.
Well, and it is kind of fascinating to see the style and how she did change and became, you know, like the 80s was very different. The puffy sleeves and the hats that, you know, the veils covering, and, you know, to how she turned fashion and ended up using fashion, you know, to help, you know, promote her causes.
Yes. Yes, I've got this. I have an interview for my next book, Diana, Wish You Were Here, from Jacques Azaguri. And
I love Jacques. Yeah. Yeah.
He's glorious, isn't he?
Fantastic. Yeah.
He gave me a wonderful, wonderful interview where he was actually able to talk about, you know, how he helped Diana to sort of champion her own transition. And of course, as we know, he really helped her with that executive, svelte, woman of the world look.
Yes. We actually photographed 5 of his gorgeous gowns in Kensington Palace while we were there picking up the Versace dress. So we actually have 5 of his dresses on display in the museum, which, yeah, he's a very generous guy. I love him.
Wow. You don't by any chance have again, it was a short cocktail dress, which is black sequined, that she wore when she was awarded the Humanitarian Award in '97. You don't have that.
There was the black dress. He gave her 2 dresses that were, one was for her birthday, on her 36th birthday, I think it was 36, yeah. And she wore it. It was the last ever public event she went to before she passed. So she wore his dress that night, and because he gave it to her as a birthday present, and she wore that in honor of, you know, him giving that. It was a long black one, and then there was, we got 3 red ones, 2 black ones, and I forget the other, blue ones, the little blue one with the bow on the top.
Wonderful. So can we go on, Ryan, please?
Do you see the little picture down there in the bottom corner? Do you see the rats that ate that? Do you see that?
Oh, you're looking at the actual jacket.
Actual jacket. So that
jacket, left-hand corner, there's a mark.
Yeah, that's actually because that piece was left in an attic in a box in someone's house, and the little rodents got to it. So, but there's a story behind that. It's a Chelsea blazer. She actually loved the designer Chelsea and worked with them a lot. And she wore that jacket quite a lot. She had a lot of different blazers that she would pair with different things. And yeah, the Chelsea ones were very popular.
Beautiful. And here we are, for those of you who, I'm sure you're all very familiar, but here we are where we see Diana. Well, do you know what year this was?
Oh boy, I just was working on that on the weekend. I should know. I don't want to misquote.
It is the 90s, isn't it? Because
it's definitely the 90s, yeah. And this piece goes in our mother's love room, and the mother's love gallery is basically any item that was with Diana and her boys. So any item that she's wearing clothing-wise, or a gift that someone gave her where it reflects the boys, it goes into the mother's love gallery. And so this piece goes in there. Because she went. That was the Formula One Grand Prix. I forget what year, but she gave the award, the cup, and she took William and a friend. I mean, sorry, that was Harry and a friend.
Harry, yeah. And then what we're seeing is Diana with her youngest son, Prince Harry, who was he was around 10 at this point. When she passed, he was 13. Wonderful, wonderful. And what was interesting also is that, as you were saying, that she loved blazers. She loved the fact that it gave her this shape because of her height.
Yes.
And you see, it's beautifully sculptured to her body.
And it's quite deceiving, but it's actually long. Like, so when you see it, it kind of, they were always kind of down past her hip. A lot of them, I mean, not all of them, but it looks like it's very deceiving, but that is such a long jacket. And the ones that we just acquired too, all long over a skirt or a shorter skirt. But most of the jackets that, you know, we have are very long, like you said, long torso. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a whole story behind her passion because for the blazer or, you know, this form of jacket with particularly the military buttons. And that was to do with the fact that whenever her father picked her up from her prep school, he always wore a blazer. and she loved it. So she would actually snuggle into the blazer when he wasn't wearing it. And it always provided her with this extraordinary feeling of comfort. So that memory stayed with her. And what's wonderful is that you can see often when she's wearing a blazer, the boys also wear blazer.
That's right. Yeah, very matchy. Yeah,
It's very, very sweet. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And so, Ryan, please, the next image.
There's the Carolyn Charles dress.
Right.
So very, very like buttons all the way from down low, all the way up the top, a sash. And again, you can see the puffy sleeves. And this was at a children's, I forget the town now, in 1981. This was actually taken in 1982. And then the one that I loved and gravitated towards is she's coming out of the airport, Aberdeen Airport. And she's carrying Prince William on her hip, and so she wore it twice, that coat. And I was fortunate enough to meet Carolyn Charles while I was in London, and she talked about designing for Diana, and yeah, just how special that was when she basically came in off the street, and Carolyn didn't really know who she was, but she kind of got what do you call it? I'm losing my word. Introduced by her mother. So Diana's mother introduced her to Carolyn Charles, and they worked together for quite some time after that.
Yes, and I mean, I know that when the engagement was announced in the early part of '81, Frances, Diana's mother, took her to Harrods to buy not necessarily a trousseau, but to buy a series of suits, one of them being the blue suit that we know is iconic because she wore it during the photographs in Buckingham Palace when Charles and Diana were engaged.
Right, yeah.
They then realized that they needed to become more sculptured, and that's when they went off to Caroline.
Right, right.
Wonderful. And you can see, unfortunately, the photograph doesn't necessarily bring out the photograph of Diana wearing the dress doesn't necessarily state how rich the color was, which we can see in the left-hand plate, which is really beautiful.
But I do love this photo because it does reflect just how she was so gentle with children and was gravitated towards them just from early on. You know, it was always her thing to be around children, was very connected to children, and I loved how this just brings that out in her.
Yeah. And in fact, one of my interviews for the next book is with someone who came to me who was in the kindergarten where Diana was the nursery teacher.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah.
She's given me this acute. She's also living in Los Angeles, or not actually in Los Angeles, but outside Los Angeles.
Wonderful.
Amazing. And the next plate, please. Thank you, Ryan.
Oh, I love this piece. This is an amazing silk wool shawl that was given to her in that photo in Pakistan. And she came back as soon as she was gifted it. And there's a story behind it, which I think I wrote about, which is giving a black shawl to a white woman was a very significant thing that they did back then in Pakistan at the time. And it was a symbol of union between the religions and people and uniting people. So as soon as she got it, she wrapped it around her head. They helped her wrap around her head. And obviously she's got bare feet, which I love. And so when she came back to London, she gave it to Onyu, her acupuncturist at the time, and as a gift. And so that was in her possession until she died a couple of years ago. And when that came out, it came out of her estate. But the story with Onyu is that she... her husband was in hospital, had a heart attack, and she went to visit the husband, Joe, I think his name is. And that was when she met Asnat Khan, the heart surgeon. Yeah. And so that was the story behind that. And so without that connection, she wouldn't have had that, romance for so many years with him. Yeah.
And Onyu was from Pakistan?
No, I think she was English. She's I don't know, Toffolo. Her last name was Toffolo. But yeah, she I don't remember where she was from. I don't think she was Pakistan. But yeah. Amazing. But I like the connection between the pieces and the story. It's like, again, those chance meetings and things that happen in your life aren't just chance meetings when you look back in life, right? They are always meant to kind of end up where you are today in a way. They put you in the place to be, to go forward. I
Absolutely,
think
absolutely. I mean, they, you know, and obviously for someone like Diana, who was obviously an immense lover of beauty and a supporter of world clothes design, couturier design, particularly, you know, see as we look into these pieces, we begin to really feel the presence of Diana because these pieces were the fabric of her life. And of course, we all know how important clothes are.
Right. Yeah.
And particularly, you know, when, you know, obviously she was a lady that was constantly engaged in public persona. And, you know, the station of being a royal princess, the station of being a benefactress to so many different charities. And then, of course, taking full responsibility of her iconic status as it grew, particularly through the 90s.
Absolutely.
These pieces are absolutely priceless. They're really ravishing.
Well, and what ended up happening too was she would actually give a lot of pieces to charities, which is why you see none of them all being sold at Christie's. Over the years, she would write a list and it would be like 10 items. And, you know, from albums with all the bands on it to cassettes to Chanel bags to shoes to, you know, chocolate, like crystal dishes, like, and she would give these pieces away to charities back in the day to help raise money for all of the charities that she supported, and not knowing literally like how valuable and historical these pieces are actually today. It's quite profound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We hear you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Really profound. And so are there any more images, Ryan? I think that must be it. I thought we had more images. However, I was going to punctuate, you know, as we journey through the whole process. Well, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, it gives you an opportunity to see the quality of the extraordinary collection, rather, that Renae has actually brought together.
Actually, yeah. And then if you got the Versace dress, just because I got this the other day from
yes, I did actually send that to Ryan. I don't quite know where that is.
So that's the Versace dress where she was photographed with Patrick de Mercielier, and obviously it was on the cover right the month after she died to honor her life and legacy. But that dress is just incredible. It's just it's a piece of art, to be quite honest. And we loaned that to Kensington Palace for 2 years. It was on display there, and it became the feature dress in London at the time. So we, you know, get there and it's like, oh my gosh, we had no idea that it would be the feature dress, but we were so honored and just happy that it was telling her story again and keeping her legacy alive for, you know, future generations, which I think is the most important part.
And I do have a photograph of the dress from your exhibition. So with your permission, what I'll do post our time together is that I'll put it straight up onto Diana the Voice of Change Facebook page. So that people can see it. So, you know, the wonderful people that are listening in, if you can bear that in mind, what I'll do is I'll put it straight into Diana, you know, onto the Diana Voice of Change Facebook page, so you can actually see it very closely.
That'd be amazing.
So, and of course, you know, we're looking at gowns, but as you've already heard Renae refer to a number of other artifacts that you have. What is the most unusual artifact that you have in the collection?
Unusual. I want to say profound. There's two pieces. They actually both relate to when she passed. The one item that I find very, very, I don't even know the word to use, but I'll explain it. It's an Elton John Yellow Brick Road album. And so Diana used to write her name on everything as a child, everything to determine it wasn't, you know, her brothers or her sisters. So she would write Diana on absolutely everything. So when we acquire pieces, her toys, everything's got a name on it, including wool sheets that were, you know, it was just a tradition, I suppose, where they would label everything when they were, like, all her clothing's got Diana Spencer in the back of these teenage items. But this Yellow Brick Road album, she actually wrote 3 love hearts under Elton John, because she must have had an infatuation with Elton John. And this, you've got to remember, she was a teenager. She hadn't met Prince Charles. She was still like growing up, and she had a 25 album collection. And under Marilyn Monroe, Candle in the Wind, she wrote Love You. And so I find that really kind of like eerie but prolific at the same time, that she would actually become friends with Elton John growing up. and then he would play that song when she passed away, and she wouldn't have had any idea at that time. And I find that, I don't know, Stuart, what are the words for that? Like,
well, this is another aspect, you know, as we go deeper into our sharing about this extraordinary human being, that we hold with such love, that one of her extraordinary abilities was her intuition.
Yeah.
She would often just very blithely say something en passant, just in passing. And I would say, wait a minute. I mean, the very fact that, for example, as we said goodbye before, this was in July of 1997, before she was taking the boys onto Al Fayed's yacht, and of course, then, you know, they were going to be flying back to Balmoral to spend summer with their grandparents and with their father. And then she was going to go on and spend more time with Dodie. As she was leaving me, she said, "Oh, this has been so amazing. I can't wait to see you in a month's time, or in 3 weeks' time when I get back, because I'm going to come back and I look so sexy because I'm going to have that tan. But wouldn't it be amazing, you know, all of the work that we've done together, wouldn't it be amazing if it was actually in a book? But don't let's publish it until the children are married, you know." And I thought, what an extraordinary thing to say. And I know that in that moment, as she looked into my eyes and hugged and kissed me, a feeling thudded into my being that this was the last time that I would see her. But I didn't allow her to see this. What I'm really indicating through whatever the behavior was, whatever the feelings were, there was this extraordinary intuitive ability that Diana had. And so, being the anointed one that she was, I feel that she had this very open psyche, and that information was dropped in from the unseen sacred ones that we all know are around us, whether they be angels or ascended masters and mistresses, our spirit guardians, that she was well looked after. I mean, often, you know, one of the things that I kept on saying to her when she said, "Oh, I can't, I'm so terrified, I'm so terrified, I'm so terrified," about going out onto a big stage to speak to maybe 1,000 people, I would say, "But you're not there alone. You've got 55,000 spirits behind you. I mean, they're all there willing you on." So she would always breathe deeply before going on stage and summon these beings. We had a special prayer that she would use that I'm going to put into the next book.
Wonderful.
So there was this extraordinary acuteness about the empathic nature of her status. The fact all of her feeling states were really piquant. You know, they were so peaked that she would feel deeply. And of course, if it was joyous, it was ecstatic. But if it was actually the reverse, you know, and full of woe, then she could really sink into the depths of despondent. So I put it down to this extraordinary intuition that she had.
And again, I think it's prolific in the sense that, like, as a teenager, you wouldn't really understand how your life would unfold, and yet to the end of it, to come with this historic piece that literally was the last time that she was, you know, honored in life, you know. So it was this full circle. It was kind of like the arc of, like, oh wow, you know, Elton and her became close. She wouldn't have known that, you know. And the candle in the wind, you know, it was just very, that piece. And then we've got a really amazing collection actually from Richard Dalton. Bless you. Richard Dalton was her hairdresser for 12 years, and all her handwritten hair appointments that are like, you know, W and H as well, meaning the boys get their hair cut. So like pages and pages of all her hair appointments, which I find really special. Jenny Rivet, her personal trainer, same thing. All these beautiful, and she was a prolific writer. And I think that's a gift that we've actually lost as a you know, species, as a human race, is the gift to say thank you and to write notes to people, obviously because of the technology that we have today. But it felt like she would actually sit down and write a thank you note to anybody she met before she even went to the event. You know, she was almost writing a thank you before she even got there. And I find that like quite an extraordinary thing, to be able to put the time into writing all these handwritten thank you notes and express how she felt with people. And I think that was a gorgeous gift, you know, and a great trait.
Absolutely extraordinary. I don't know if I shared with you my story of my memorabilia, because I had all of these cards and letters that she'd written to me, and they were in a briefcase in the back of my car, which was an open hatchback at that time. And I parked it outside my apartment in Chelsea, not very far from where I am now in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And I ran into the apartment to grab something. This must have taken 50 seconds.
Yeah.
And when I came back, the briefcase had gone.
Oh my gosh.
I lost all of those treasures.
Oh my gosh.
And there was one, you know, because cell phones only really came around, and they were huge in around 95, 96. And that was, of course, just towards the end of her life. So most of the photographs that we see of her are not actually selfies. They're not from cell phone. They're from, you know, from either amateur or professional photographers.
Yes, yeah.
She actually had this really special, one of the first iPhones, which had a camera in it. And we took a quick photograph when she was leaving one day. And all of that went.
Oh no, that's such a shame.
What's the piece that you revere most? We've heard about the album, the Elton John album. What's the piece that you revere most?
There's so many. Like I've become, like I pinch myself constantly when I like her. The gallery that I like the most is the teenage gallery. It starts with her baby stuff, with her dresses that she wore when she was a baby and shoes that she ended up gifting to a homeless mother in Knightsbridge back in, even before she married Charles. It was right around the cusp. And she bumped into this pregnant woman who was homeless, and they formed a relationship because the mother was destitute and crying, and Diana gave the woman a hug. And throughout that time, all the way through her marriage, she would donate these things to the girl, the baby called Cara. And Cara has since passed, the mother has since passed, and the sister has this whole collection of toys that Diana had with Diana's name on it. So there's this beautiful collection of really historic things that belong to Diana as a baby and a child. And that gallery per se is one of my favorites because it does reflect her at a very young age. And I think you don't get to see that unless you're her brother and it's at Althorpe or her sons. And so that whole collection, I think, is pretty remarkable. And anything that relates to her, you know, her childhood and growing up, books that she used to read, and the albums, you know, LPs when you open them up and they've got the old days, and cassettes, and school cases, you know, so she takes school, you know, the old ports that you take to preschool and school, things like that. We have a beautiful designer handbag collection as well, like all the brands, Chanel and YSL, and all her name is in it. They're tagged. It's kind of cool. So everything's sectioned off, and you walk, you know, go through the gallery, and it tells her story, weaves in pretty well. And then at the last, we have like an art gallery with all images of Diana that have been done by artists all around the world, a lot from London, actually. Bambi's, we've got a Banksy, lots of street artists that are kind of famous. And it just reflects, you know, how people are still inspired by her, even after all these years have gone by. Just the profoundness that she had, the humanitarian stuff. You know, we've got to remember that her and Mother Teresa died within, like, what, 5 days apart from each other. And it was such a huge void in the world to lose these two very powerful humanitarian women. And I always look back to that day. Everybody that I interview knows where they were when that happened. They can all remember stopping still and actually not, you know, pretty much moving for the rest of the week and just sobbing. The whole world was in mourning, and that's never happened again. And that we're talking like, what, 25, 26 years, not 20, yeah, 20 years later. It's like, that's part of the reason too that I felt compelled to kind of do the museum and have her pieces come back together in one place, was so that younger generations, you and I know it because we're older now, getting older, but the younger generation doesn't have that connection because they weren't born when she was around. She's passed, but it's quite surprising how many people don't know. I go, do you know Princess Diana? And they're like, and I'm like, what? And I wanted to do it for that reason, to kind of keep her legacy alive and make it, you know, what's really great. Can I just share one thing that just came to my mind, is that in the museum, it's very unique that you can actually talk to people while you're inside the museum. It hasn't been done before. So you can text each other. You can just do a voice, you know, I just want to talk to you, or you can do video like you and I are doing now. And so the idea was to keep the community connected, and you can walk through the museum with someone and then just talk about the pieces and stay connected. So you're not just there by yourself. And I feel like that community aspect and the connection is what we're missing again in life. We've all been separated. We've all been isolated. And so I just know that that's a huge part, you know, the touching, the hugging, the holding hands, the kissing. It's all important for our humanness of us, you know, like we've got to come back to that.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, particularly, of course, we're really resting so much of our exchange, our dialogue on the substance of Diana. But we see that what she offered us is now quintessential as we arise out of one of the greatest and worst global pandemics that has ever experienced. I mean, this has not been a nationhood, it's been global.
Yeah.
And of course, I would like to say that although, you know, going back to what you were talking about in terms of Diana's passing and Mother Teresa's passing, we know that they were iconic. And so, as I explain in the book, something huge happens when an anointed one passes. The same thing happened many, many years earlier in '63 with JFK, and then it was in '68 with Martin Luther King, and in the same year, Bobby Kennedy. And these people who were such great world servants really left a shockwave around the planet. When Diana passed, 3.9 billion people wept, which was in excess of 2/3 of the population of the planet at that time. And that went down in recorded history. Perhaps COVID also has an element of that. It's just been sustained rather than one singular shock. However, you were talking about the website. Please give us details about how people, because we're coming to the close of our conversation.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, we have a membership. You can come for a day, a week, or a month.
Firstly, what is it called?
It's called the princessdianamuseum.org. You can go there just by typing in princessdianamuseum.org, and then it will take you through the steps to sign up and become a member. It's a non-profit, and all of our money raised goes back to children's charities. We've raised over $300,000 right now for this charity that we work with that help children in India, Africa, and the Philippines become sustainable, and kind of in the same light that Diana loved working with children. I'm connected with children, so I just felt it was a natural thing to continue to give back to children's causes. And then if you wanted to go to the foundation page, which is the nonprofit, and it talks about the story and the history, that's called the princessandtheplatypus.org. There you go. So that's where you can go and see more of the stories and the pieces that we have, and some videos, and gives you an idea of what we've been doing.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And this is very, very easily accessed. So just to repeat, you can see Ryan has actually typed out the www.theprincessandtheplatypus.org. But the other address you mentioned was princessdiana.org.
Museum.org.
Oh, so it's this one here. Okay.
Yeah,
right. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this has been absolutely extraordinary, and not only has it given you a few brief moments to share with us the immense story of your fervor and your passion and your love, and in many ways your teaching of how significant she was to you and how significant she was to the world. But also you've introduced us to this extraordinary museum. So remember, ladies and gentlemen, that this is an award-winning museum, and we firmly recommend, I don't know if, Ryan, if you could just put that website up again, please, the princessdianamuseum.org. Please do go. And everybody, thank you so much from all over the world tuning in. And we will be meeting again next week on
Thank you. It was so nice.
October the 25th for another extraordinary deep dialogue. And I want to say officially, thank you, Renae. It's been absolutely wonderful. Yes, please like and subscribe, everybody, through that YouTube link. Bless you, bless you.
Thank you. Such a nice time spending time with you, and I'm sending you lots of love and light.
Bless you. Thank you so much. Stay where you are, my darling. Thank you, Ryan.